how is the learning curve at Alcimed like once you join as a consultant, especially if you join as a...
So that's, yeah, thank you, Amkar, for asking this question. Maybe I'll let Rose and Dana comment, answer this question.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Dana, if you want to specifically touch on the PhD aspect first, and then I can jump in at least what the learning curve would be for anyone else, because I actually have a master's.
Yes.
So then I can jump in after talking about what else the learning curve might be like.
Sure. So I think that, you know, it's important to remember that there's no like magical skill set that makes you good at this job. So there is a learning curve in terms of, you know, mostly what we're looking for is either people who have already have solid business backgrounds or already have solid science backgrounds, and we'll teach you what you need to know on the other side, right? So I, for example, my PhD is in virology. So I'm an infectious disease person. So I've had to learn a lot of the business side of strategy and how pharma companies operate since I've been there. So there's always something to be learning. I would say that in terms of skill sets, what we're looking for are these, you know, soft skills. So, you know, we want you to be very adventurous, willing to sort of dive into questions that clearly do not have good, clear answers. If they did, they wouldn't have called us to answer them for them. You know, we expect people to be very fun. Consulting is, you know, one of those careers where if you don't enjoy doing it, you should not try it. You know, so we're a very collaborative office. You know, we have to do everything in sort of in a group setting to make sure we arrive at the right answer. So, you know, we do expect a lot of efforts to be made to keep that fun and exciting. But we also expect, you know, people who are very self-sufficient in terms of, you know, striving to figure out an answer, asking for help when they need it. And I think that's really the name of the game, is that each project is so unique. You can even see in the 3 typical projects that I assigned to you, that I described to you earlier, there's really not like one particular way of doing that. And I think that's something that really sets us apart from other consulting firms and maybe makes our needs or our skill set and our learning curve a little bit different. Is that we develop an independent methodology to answer each. So at the beginning of a project, a project manager and the business development manager would sit down with the client to ask what the question is and develop a method for answering that question that's highly specific to what you want to know. So from one project to the next, you may have to pick up a lot of skills along the way. Maybe sometimes it's interviews, maybe sometimes it's building financial models, maybe sometimes it's drawing mind maps, or, you know, we can get into, or maybe it's moderating a workshop, right? Maybe it's actually trying to get 12 people smarter than you just to make a decision, which is not as easy as it sounds, right? So in that sense, it's hard to say what the learning curve is in terms of definite skills. So we mostly evaluate new consultants on their willingness to just sort of dive in. I'm going to turn it over to Rose, though, and let you, because I don't necessarily think the skill set is so much different, whether you're a PhD student. The only thing that I would say is the real challenge for PhDs is learning how to not, Jay is laughing because he is the one that had to painfully teach me how not to do this. You know, like, PhDs, they need to know what the end of the answer is, right? Like, we're not looking to just read Harry Potter. We're looking to be able to explain to you who every character is and how many times they've ever spoken to Harry, right? Like, it's a different level of information, which is obviously about 100 times more information than the client actually needs to answer his question. So I would say that's the big challenge as a PhD, is actually sort of learning how not to lose the forest for the trees, if I can use that metaphor. But I think Rose has a different perspective on this. So,
yeah, I would say it really does depend on your personality. Coming in with an MS, I really didn't see this huge learning curve for me. And I think it really does depend on your initiative? How willing are you to put in the time to really progress on the different aspects? How willing and how ready you are to learn everything? Because you know, as a consultant, when you come in, you start on a project. We put you right in a project. You start right away in front of the client. So you are starting to get that experience. So I would say it's very important that you start working on trying to learn as quick as you can. So definitely something that's very useful is if you are a fast learner, but that's not to say that you're not going to get any help at all as you go through and you gain the experience. One thing I say really helps is having that initiative. As I said, it is working hard to progress forward. It is, you know, as a consultant, what helps you to progress from consultant to senior consultant, which I am now, and then later to manager, is that initiative, is that drive. You know, you start in the beginning learning the process, and then you need to start taking control of your timing, taking control of the deadlines, taking control of interactions with the client, as I said. So really, from my side, it wasn't a huge learning curve. There's a lot that I brought in from my work doing as an MS, but even then I also still similarly had a tendency to dive a little too deep. And again, it's all about learning quickly to realize at what point you stop, but you have your team for that. So any of these skills that you have or you need to improve on or you don't have, you know, that also does come with the experience and working with your team.
Yeah, and I don't have anything more to add to what Dana and Rose said. I think they said it. It was on point. Just see your training, you know, your background training, just as again tools, methods that was provided to you by your university. That is helpful to structure, and as Rose and Dana were mentioning, to structure your thoughts and so on, and to apply that to our clients. Remember that our positioning is helping our clients on uncharted territories for them and in the absolute. If I'm talking about the absolute, we're in this COVID-19 situation right now, crisis. Nobody know much about what it is. The lockdown is new for everyone. Working in lockdown is new for everyone, is new for our clients. And our clients ask for our help to also evolve and adapt to this situation. And that's not the PhD that will tell you, you know, how to do that. That's not an MS or whatever. That's more how you're using your way of thinking to analyze the situation and help your client progress. I see other questions. Thank you for all those questions. It's very helpful. I can maybe jump to one of the, Peter, I hope that we answered the question also for you. Garima, you're asking for a question about the skills that we are interested in. And I would say also for the two type of positions. Here we've been talking about the entry point of consultant. And we're looking, and again, our priority is also the business development manager. To make it short, the reason why you are all here is because we consider that you would all fit to the profiles or the skills and the way of thinking that we are interested in. Meaning that we need people that are curious, we need people that are passionate about the field, about the job, but mostly I would say are able to navigate and learn in those very complex scientific and business environments. And that's true both for consultant and for business development manager. The only difference in picking a position versus another is, if I make it very simple, the business development manager is the one, is the commercial person. So is the one who would be driven by saying, hey, I want to find and expand our portfolio of clients. So to explore those new opportunities and develop our activity. Initially, there's a lot of initiation in what we do. Again, we are growing, so there's a lot of things that we need to initiate. And it was going to be the one identifying the need of a client, proposing some methodologies, ways of working, and bringing contracts back home. And then obviously to maintain the relationship with the clients in the long run. Once we have this contract in, then it's the consultant and project management team that comes into play. And Rose and Dana are the explorers or the detectives, if you want. They are the ones who are going to be, who now understand the question of the client and say, how can we answer this question? And by applying methodologies, by applying investigation skills, applying analytical skills, by applying, this mixing the soft skills that Dana mentioned, that, or maybe you need to also, because you're in interaction with the client, how do we best manage the client and how do we progress together? So honestly, the question is more, what are your main drivers? Do you want to deep dive into the topic? In that case, consultant is what you want to do. Or do you want to identify those different initial questions and develop the business, bringing back money, if I'm making it very simple? And that you need to consider that. Okay, but in both cases, you need to be able to understand and challenge clients in complex scientific and business environment and questions.
I guess if I could just follow up on one aspect of that, when you get to the exploration side, which is the consultants and the project managers, one of the things that we as a consulting firm strive to do that's maybe different from some of the other consulting firms you may have reached out to in the past is that there is no entry-level analyst position, right? Everyone is client forward from day one. So when Rose and I both started as consultants, we were there in client meetings from the first week, right? So we're not going to hide you in some back office making Excels for someone else to show the client for 2 years before we let you do something more interesting, right? We don't actually have those functions. So everyone either comes in as a consultant or a business development manager. It doesn't actually matter if you have a PhD or a master's degree. Rose and I started in the same place. What the difference in the degree may make for you, or if you come in with more experience, for example, is how fast you make the transition from consultant to senior consultant, right? So I think I was only a consultant for 9 months before becoming a senior consultant. So that how fast you sort of move from the beginning, entry position to being a senior consultant is entirely dependent on your own ambition, right?
And I'm a good example. I'm a good counter example. It took me 2 years to become senior consultant. But again, that depends on a lot of different things. I see other question. Thank you for that. Let me regroup some of the question. I see there's a question about the sponsor for international students, and I think that's a question I'd like to keep also mostly for the end, so the more technical way of doing it. But still regrouping some other questions. I love the question of Sanober Latif asking about openings. Is there more openings in Princeton or in other consulting locations? And what makes me laugh is obviously if you do need to learn French. Yes, of course, you need to understand and learn French and speak it. No, of course not. I'll start with this one. No, yes, indeed, we have, the reason why I'm French, we're a French company. Yes, there is this culture. I was part of the management coming, so I'm just bringing my baggage with me. No, we are international. We're very international, by the way. We have offices in France. We've got offices here in Princeton, Germany, Switzerland, Brussels, and Singapore. So Belgium and Singapore. So you can imagine that we won't be imposing people to speak French. And again, the reason why we came here is to be close to our US cultured clients. What we can offer, though, because we're very international, is I think we're paying for some initiation lessons of French for whoever is interested. But it's more something that we do because, well, hey, that's a good opportunity. So at least that is covered. If you need to speak French fluently, if you want to apply to a position in France, which is the second part of the question, I don't believe so. It depends. We have many. We know many of our colleagues in Paris, in the Paris office, that have started without talking a word in French, and they still deal, with more this international clients. I cannot speak really for who my colleagues in Paris are looking for in terms of skills. That may have changed. I would tend to think that maybe it helps to speak a little bit of French if you work in the Paris office. Here it's not, it wouldn't be the case. You asked also the questions of the current openings. Yes, here the reason we're here is that we're developing worldwide. Here in Princeton, yes, we are looking for, again, we're looking for 2 business development managers at that stage. We're recruiting right now. That's the priority. For Princeton, again, we're going to be looking for more consultants, more down the road, more toward the end of the year as we are growing. We are at that stage pretty staffed, pretty calibrated, but we are always interested in getting your resume, your candidacy, even if it's now for a job or a job opening in 6 months from now, because we really recruit on a rolling basis, I would say. So if you are more interested in consultant than business development manager, please send us your resume. And then as we get closer to the time when we'll open a position and or when you get your degree, we can also re-coordinate together so we can progress on the recruitment process with you. Let me look at those other questions.
Yeah, now someone asked about the international students, whether
yes.
Sponsor. Maybe if you want, I can remind you at the end, or if you want to tackle that one now.
Yeah, probably. Well, I can actually answer this question now. So as you see, we are very international. So that's in our culture. So we do hire, international people, international culture. We have, I think, we speak around 25, 30 languages around the globe. So that gives you an idea. And even in Princeton, we've had people from China, Taiwan, Latin America, French, Canadian, if I remember. So that's something that we value. Then from a visa standpoint, specifically, the way we see that is we just need to make sure that it is feasible and practical, and that it makes sense. As you understand, we hire people, we invest in hiring people. We want them to be the partners in the long run. Okay. So basically what we say is that you'd be starting as a consultant or starting with a business development manager. The idea is not to stop this collaboration in 6 months, a year from now, or 2 years from now. It's really to grow and you being a part of the team on the long run. So having said that, there was a question of OPT1, OPT1. So what we know, the problem is not, I would say, to hire OPT1. The administrative difficulty might come when we need to transition to a visa. And there's different ways, and we have sponsored some visas in the past. We're actually sponsoring some of them. What I believe can sometimes be the difficulty is in the feasibility of having, so usually I think like one of the ways, the H1B visa is something that works. That is a good transition for PT1. The thing then, it needs to be very fine. So in terms of feasibility, it can be tricky. Because there's a question of seasonality. I don't know how much familiar you are with H1B visas. It's a lottery, I think. So there's numerous clauses. So there's also, we cannot guarantee, we can start the process. We cannot guarantee that you will have the visa on time. And also, I think there's a seasonality. And so we don't want to at least create a situation where you would be out of job for 5 months for an answer that might be a yes, great, or a no. So, just long story short, it's what we're looking at is really the feasibility and how much it is practical and makes sense for I would say the worst case scenario for both us and someone we would have hired as a PT1 would be that after 5 months of waiting and not working with us, is also saying, well, actually, you're not granted the H-1B because there's no H-1B visa anymore. So I'm not the regulatory expert here. I've got a lot of my colleagues that deal with that. But I would say that that's why we consider whatever visa, by the way. It's really looking at the feasibility, the timing, the continuity, and so on and so forth. I hope I'm answering the question.
Yeah, that's super clear. Thanks a lot.
Okay, good. Scrolling to other questions that you submitted. Application and interview process for applicants looking to join this summer. Good question. So the interview process is the same for everyone around the world. So if you're interested, please, I think we, Alberto, I don't know if we provided you with the link to apply online. But you have basically two ways. Either you can send us directly your resume, and then we can put that back into our, central recruitment process. I would be happy to do that. So Alberto has our email address, so don't hesitate to send your application, or go directly online. Again, we centralize our recruitment process. Then what you'd be asked to do is provide the resume, and also we do it through a video now. So we would ask you to smile in front of a camera, and we have like this preliminary interview where we ask you a few questions. You record yourself and you post the video. That way, internally, if you want to apply to Princeton, or if you want to apply to Princeton and maybe Singapore or other offices, you have the possibility to show the video to every potential recruiter. So naming Dana, me, and maybe some of our colleagues in Singapore and Paris or Germany, for instance, But that is centralized. So that would be the process. Then, just to give you perspective in terms of timeline, we go pretty fast. We can go pretty fast in the process. Once you have started the application, the first step is validating that the video attracts us, and we want to meet you either in person if COVID-19 crisis is done, or of course by Skype, but organizing interviews, so individual interviews, usually with Dana or me. That would be the first steps, and then you would be meeting with other of our colleagues up to our president in the end, if everything goes well. And that can be pretty quick. It takes between 2 and 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
Yes, we are recruiting.
You definitely are growing a lot, right? And yeah, I guess I can ask you. Let's see.
Maybe I can follow up as you Alberto, if you're thinking of a question. Peter, you following up on that question. You said, how far from your graduation you should apply? I would say that it's better timing is probably 2 to 3 months before, apply 2 to 3 months before your graduation, because then we can really start the process, and as you understand, it can go pretty quickly.
Another thing I see they're asking is like whether Alcimed has some type of capability of letting a consultant temporarily relocate. Let's say you're working in Princeton, and you want to do like 3 months in Paris. Is that a thing or not really?
So yeah, it's a good question. So I know that we do things a little bit differently. So we're very invested in developing a very cohesive team, right? So the 16 or 17 of us in Princeton really function as a very central unit. So, you know, we might assign you to a project that's happening from another BU. So, for example, one of my consultants, Isham, is currently working for a business unit in Paris on a project because they needed someone to be staffed. And so the rule of thumb is that you would still continue to work from Princeton for the majority of the project, but you may, for example, have to go to Paris for a meeting here or there. Wouldn't, you know, ship you off to Paris for 3 months and bring you back. That being said, you do go to Paris about 3 times a year. We have an innovation day. The whole company shows up the last Thursday in January, you know, to sort of think about topics that are new and current. And then everyone spends a week in Paris headquarters for training once a year. And then everyone goes back at the end of July for a big party. We literally just fly to Paris for lots of eating and drinking and dancing, and then fly back. So that's, you know, so there will be some sort of dedicated back and forth. Every once in a while, you will get assigned to a project where you might say, for example, I had to spend a week in Munich last year running a workshop for a client. But we wouldn't just ship you to another office so you can live in Paris for 3 months. Now, that said, we do take inter-office transfers. So for example, we currently have a senior consultant from our office in Brussels who will be joining the Princeton team once we get her visa straightened out. But that's a permanent transfer, right? It's not a temporary sort of thing. She is joining our team for the rest of her time at Alcimed. So there is some movement between offices, but it's usually very purposeful.
Got it.
There's a question in terms of, Oliver asked about how long the consultants are staying with you in general. So, well, you already have a pretty good sample here. I started as a consultant. I'm here after 12 years. So I'm one of the dinosaurs, but yeah. Dana, how long have you been with us?
It's 4 years in October, same as Rose.
Yeah. And so you see, and then I would say that again, it's difficult to give an answer that is general, because again, we investing efforts and training in people that we want to stay and grow with us as long as possible. So yes, you will have consultants that will maybe leave after a year. Yeah, that happens. And again, it's always a matter of, can be a question of fit. It can be a question of, well, yeah, it wasn't what the consultant wanted to do. It can be a matter of performance, obviously. Might not be the best fit also on our side. But we do invest in people to stay. And so I would say, actually, what we're doing is that the path is for a consultant where we pushing or promoting internally is that you evolve and grow as a project manager, which is, if you want, this senior consultant that now his own project is to manage a team of consultants and still, you know, bring all those methodologies, qualities, etc. On. So Rose is on the path for that, for instance, right now. We have others like that. And because we believe that's the way we're going to be growing anyway.
I think more to the point that we do have less turnover than the average consulting firm, right? I know there's, you know, the average consulting firm is turning over 50% of the office every like 2 years, yeah, which seems insane to us. And I think that that's mostly because, to answer Charlotte's question on the office culture, you know, I treat my coworkers as if they're some of my closest friends. You know, I mean, we are a very cohesive unit, and so I think that, you know, the normal consulting model, if you go to a Bain or a McKinsey, and don't get me wrong, I have some great friends who work at establishments, but we are not here to work you to death. We do not think that consulting means that on Monday morning you get on a plane and you come back on Thursday night having lived in a hotel for a week. That's not a life, or that's not the joie de vivre, as the French call it, right? So we want you to live a very sustainable existence as a consultant, which is why we are a little more strategic about when we travel and why we travel. It also means that we, rather than fling you across the country to sit in a conference room at your clients by yourself, which is fun, we want to be in the office directly interacting with each other, you know, solving problems as a group, brainstorming together. So it's a highly interactive environment. One of our, I think, biggest challenges during COVID is actually not having the team sit down for lunch together every day, and, you know, or having coffee together in the morning. It's not really the same over Zoom, sadly. So we do have a very invested office culture, right? It's really meant to be a dynamic work environment with a lot of room for you to define yourself, right? So a good example of this is we have two very motivated consultants who both came out of the public health space, who are deeply invested in, say, improving the healthcare system. So Jay and I are currently helping them transfer some work that we typically do in Europe on patient efficiency pathways, and training them in actually going out to some of the healthcare systems in our area to try and see if we can kind of do that similar work here. So when Jay says that you can kind of chart your own path at Alcimed, we're not kidding about that, right? We definitely mean what we say in that sense. And some people will start as consultants and decide they'd rather be a biz dev, and you'll get some people that transfer that way. You'll get some people who take more of maybe the standard path for a consultant, which is the path that I took and the path Rose is on, where you go from being a consultant to a project manager, where the client relationship really becomes yours to own, where you are really taking that extra step to challenge the consultant to make sure they've really, you know, gone as far in the analysis as they can, training other people to do what you do. And then I will very soon be taking sort of a next step where we have a couple of people in the company who really specialize in a particular subject matter, who really then push the company forward, using our expertise to make sure that we work on the kinds of topics that we're very interested in. If you want to see what some of that looks like, every week on LinkedIn, we publish a newsletter on COVID called the Alcivax. It's a very good digest of the history of our pandemic in real time, I think. So I edit that on a weekly basis, just to give you kind of an idea of maybe how we're thinking about things and understanding how something as complex as a pandemic, you know, is connected to how you live your life now, what, you know, whether or not the economy will recover, what that means in terms of government and public trusts, which was the topic for this morning. So it's a very dynamic environment, but it's kind of yours to decide. And I think because we give everyone that freedom, we don't have very much turnover.
Do you want to maybe Rose to, I don't know, give you also your point of view, or to comment on that question or another?
I would say that a lot of it has been covered by what Dana was talking about. Definitely, though, you know, being in the consultant role right now, that really is the case, of having your team behind you. Something I want to mention, you know, we've talked about how you do get thrown in front of the clients, and especially coming from a background where you might not have done something like that, where you might not have had a lot of public speaking, or you're going to be talking with a lot of executives, senior executives, which I've had to do. You know, you do have your team, not just your manager and your business developer, who are the project team, but you have your entire team in the office that can help you with that. And again,
and
like
beyond.
And beyond. Yeah, we actually do have a lot of conversations from individuals from other offices who have done projects very similar to that, to reach out and get ideas of how we can do something similar with our clients, or how to deal with certain things with our clients. So it's very much, we are connected team-wise, BU-wise, and globally within Alcimed.
So I wanted to ask you how is a typical day of a consultant, project manager, or business developer at Alcimed?
Rose, maybe if you want to start.
Yes. So every day can be a little bit different, just depending on what part of the project you're on. So I think probably the best way to explain it is essentially how you go through the project. So the very first thing, you have the kickoff meeting with the client. Again, you're there, you meet them with the whole team. And then as a consultant, you start with the research. So you're doing the literary research, you are investigating different papers, different journals. Depending on what it is, you could be looking at the different competition, press releases. And then also depending on the project, you'll be looking for key opinion leaders or experts in the field to interview them to further supplement the research that you've done. So, your days could really vary of if you're doing a mixture of the literary research and setting up interviews, having those interviews. And then throughout your project, we like to have weekly meetings with the client. Just to give them a progress update on the project, to give them our key learnings for the week. Also, we follow up with questions to see, do you want us to further investigate here? How is this looking for you? They ask us questions. So really a lot of collaboration here on a weekly basis. So on top of that, not only are you doing the research, you're also having your meetings with your team to prepare for those. And as you start to get closer to the end of the project, then you're doing the analysis. You're really taking all of that research together. You're creating the recommendations. What does it all mean for the client? What does it mean for their business? What is their strategy going to look like? And that, again, you're having meetings with your team. And also we do internal expertise committees. Again, we'll reach out to individuals throughout the company to get their insights as we build the recommendations. Are we covering everything? So you'll be putting all of that together towards the end of the project. It's a little bit more fast paced as everything is coming together to that final package where you then present it to the client. And sometimes at the final presentation, not just the client, but sometimes their boss or other coworkers and executives. So giving them everything that you've done and your recommendations. So every day can vary depending on what level, what part of the project that you are, but it's not going to exactly be the same.
Great, thank you. So is there a specific way feedback is scheduled at Alcimed, or is it like a live feedback for a consultant, for example? Like, let's say there are some areas of improvement. Is that done once a month, or like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, at least on my side, it can be continuous as you go through the project. And again, that's really the importance of a consultant, to really digest it as you go through the project, to progress within the project. But then, as Dana will talk about, when a project ends, you do have feedback there overall, and then on a yearly basis as well.
So yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on that. So I have two jobs, right? I am both a project manager for particular streams of work, and I can manage up to 5 of those at a time. And I'm also what we consider to be a reference manager. So there are a group of consultants in the office whom I'm responsible for as far as their development at Alcimed. So we do take the time, each of the consultants that I'm working with on a project, I meet with them every other day. If they're on the younger side, at least once or twice a week. If they're on the more established side, to check in, to see how it's going, to challenge their results, really push them to think maybe a little more outside the box as they're doing their analysis, to help them answer questions if they're having trouble finding sources, or they need a better strategy for getting that one perfect key opinion leader on the phone. So, I'm there to manage the day-to-day work of the project, keep us on time, and make sure we arrive at a nice, robust, quality answer. But as a reference manager, then I'm directly responsible for making sure that someone who joins the office really flourishes. So when you join the office, you have 6 months, sometimes a 9 month, and then a 1 year evaluation. So where I would sit down with the consultant and say, these are the skills that we really think that you're supposed to be developing. This is what we think you are based on our expectations. Keep in mind that's on a sliding scale. As you improve, okay becomes, or great becomes okay. And, so we keep trying to push you forward. But my job there is, to make sure that you have everything that you need to succeed, right? We want to make sure that feedback is always issued as a challenge to be better, right? And not, there's not a punitive element to it, right? Because we are very deeply invested in the team growing together. And I think that that's actually sort of why our retention rates are so high, or our turnover is so low, depending on how you want to think about it. In those evaluations, though, it's also my job to continue helping them think through where they want to evolve, right? So is my consultant ready to become a senior consultant? What do they need to do or demonstrate to be able to be promoted? Are they thinking about becoming a biz dev? Do I need to sort of help them figure out what that transition would look like? So I, as a reference manager, I'm very deeply involved in doing that. So there's sort of two levels of feedback. There's the, this is how it's going on the project. Maybe tweak this little thing so we can, go in this other direction. That's sort of the ad hoc continuous feedback that Rose is talking about. And then on a very regular basis, there's time for you and your reference manager, who actively speaks to all the other project managers that you're working with, to have a consolidated view of really where you are, what your skill set looks like, and what we can do to really push you further along that path. So it's a very active process, done in a, what I think is a very sort of constructive way of really being very relationship driven and not necessarily, we don't have some large number of metrics. No one's gonna get fired because they didn't produce the right number of slides a year or something. It's not really how it works. But.
I can, we didn't give you the full answer. I wanted to give you an answer, Alberto, about, the day-to-day life also of a business development manager, because again, it is also our priority today for Princeton. But I just want to be aware, as it's already 3. I mean, on our end, we have time. What are your constraints?
I think so. We have the Zoom meeting for a long time, so 5 more minutes would be fine.
Okay, good. So I'll try and make it short for the business development manager. So in a similar fashion as Dana and Rose were explaining in terms of evaluation, at least, or the way we make our people grow. For consultants, it's very similar for business development manager. In that case, I would say I would be the one training, our new business development managers, coaching, giving him the methods, the tools, sharing the experience to really help him grow and be successful. What is the day-to-day life? Basically, a business development manager would enter. We'd welcome him, and we would him or her, and we would give him, a territory of accounts, so a mix of high risk, high reward, big companies, smaller companies, etc. That he needs to go prospect and develop, making sure that this portfolio of accounts is big enough. There's enough room for growth, obviously. Knowing that, again, we're a drop in the ocean here in the US, we're still pretty young. We consider that the role of business development manager is 80% starting from scratch. Okay, and that's also what's interesting. You have everything to you can create, start from nothing and transform it into something great. So that's the great part about it. And so that means that on a day-to-day basis, it starts by you need to map, re-identify who would be the people that you'd like to meet, that might be potential new client, organize a way, so reaching out to them, organize meetings, with them to start creating a relationship and identify a need, what their question today, what do they need to progress on, what are their challenges. So we can also evaluate what would be the value we could bring to them. Coming back with a project manager, usually during a second meeting, and making sure that we start discussing and proposing some methodologies where we would approach it. We would approach the question of a client, then leading to a contract. And obviously, as the project starts, making sure following this the satisfaction of the client, and making sure that again we always in relationship with the existing clients, creating a new I would say a new batch of new clients, I would say, to again help with identify the needs and so on and so forth. What's really interesting, I would say, in this role is that again there's a lot to accomplish. It's creating a lot of things from an existing absent relationship for now, is going into those big accounts. So you all know those top 20 players. You may have heard about those innovative, great biotech firms, and we can start helping them along the way, being in interaction with high-level stakeholders. So we work with the director of global marketing up to the C-level. As Rose mentioned, she had to do that as well. So that's really, really motivating. And the thing is I would say, depending obviously on how you perform, the idea is to help you grow and at some point become the director of a business unit yourself, building your own team of consultant, of project manager, and business development managers, and so on.
Great. Thank you very much. And I guess we can start wrapping up if you don't want to add anything for now. No, I think it's fine. Just so maybe I can just address quickly the question of Zexuma. She said, how do you prepare yourself to enter into this consultant field when you were a student? Maybe I'll let Rose give her ideas about that. I don't know if you need to be prepared per se. I think you need to be. Rose mentioned it. Yeah. It's about willing to do it.
Yeah, I just want to say in this specific case, I did not expect this was the role that I was going to take. I didn't think this is where I was going to go in my professional development. So I wasn't prepared, but really, like I said, I don't want to overly repeat myself, but it's just what you bring to it. Bringing your organizational skills, things that you learned as a student, those are all great, but you're going to keep learning in this role. And you're going to have to adjust some of the ways you used to do things as a student. And but again, you don't need to prepare for anything. We're going to help you there.
And just as a follow-up to that, we are looking forward to when COVID is not problematic, coming on campus and organizing some more sort of in-person type events to let you get a more hands-on look about what the job is like, giving you a little bit of an opportunity to play some role-playing games and think through sort of what it might be to be an Alcimed. So hopefully we can get that coordinated as soon as it's not too scary to be outside. But we can coordinate with you, Alberto, on those things.
Yes, totally. What I'm thinking is that I'll send out a follow-up email to our list, the JHGCC's list, so reminding everyone how to apply to your business development manager, consultant, and other positions, and also your contact information for people to follow up with more questions. I'm sure everyone has. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for giving us so many insights about Alcimed, and I wish everyone has a good day. So
thank you very much for having us. Thank you for having organized that, and thank you for the Alcimed that we were almost 30 or 30 plus.
45.
Thank you very much for joining and your interest and your questions. we wanted to make it interactive, and thank you. Those questions really helped us manage that. So, and yes, we look forward to your applications.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.